Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Daily Word. Today is Monday, April 25th. We are in the last week of this month of April, and it is an April showers kind of day. It rained really hard earlier this morning, but glad you could join me on this Monday morning as we continue our ongoing conversation about our daily word and how it affects our lives and how it calls us to live, I think most importantly. So we continue together on our journey in this season of Eastertide. So for this morning, I've chosen just this one verse from 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 7, and we hear this: "Neither the one who plants nor the one who waters is anything, but the only one who is anything is God, who makes it grow." I've been, as you know, thinking a lot about what it means to live a resurrection life, a Easter people kind of life. And I've been thinking a lot about resurrection, what it means for us and how it calls us to live, and that resurrection, as it has especially affected me this year, is that resurrection is ongoing, that new life happens to us on a daily kind of basis. And I think that's true as we hear the scripture and as we hear Jesus encounter the disciples throughout the 50 days of Eastertide, as he comes to them, supports them, loves them, builds them up, and eventually, sends them to Jerusalem to wait for Pentecost and sends them out two by two. These are powerful resurrection stories because we know that the disciples didn't get it right away, and neither do we, of course. We don't have it figured out right away. And so for me, resurrection, this ongoing presence of God, is a really powerful image for us. Now, this scripture reminds me, though, and reminds us that throughout resurrection and throughout our lives, while we like to think we're in control, and we like to set parameters and set guidance and have all these things in our control, we're really not in control. We like to think that the rhythms that are set in our life can control the process that happens in our life. And if we do this and this and this, that it'll turn out okay. I read earlier this morning about what it means to leave a legacy. And it was kind of hard to read at the end. The author said that we should really live lives of humility, that we're not important, we're not special, and we're all going to leave this world, and that we should do good to do good, because that's really the best thing that we can do. I'm going to find that and probably post these words later. It was kind of humbling to read those words because we like to think we're special. We like to think we have this amazing contribution. And we try to make the rhythms of our culture adapt, and we set goals, and we try to measure spiritual success, and we like to micromanage every single detail of our life as if it were, some kind of business project. But the template, the writer of this text reminds us that it won't fit. We're called to cooperate with God's process in our lives. Neither the one who plants nor the one who waters is anything. We're the planters. We're the waterers. And the scripture reminds us that while we have these tasks to do and that God calls us to very certain things in our lives, it is God who makes it grow. It is God who helps us throughout the entirety of our lives to live the full lives, that we're called to live. And I got to thinking about that in terms of this idea of resurrection and what it means to live our lives in certain kind of ways. I mean, I know as well as you as well as I, we get discouraged by things. We're hurt by things people do and things people say. We set goals and we have plans and they don't always work out. Or sometimes they work out in ways very different than we even had in mind. I'm reminded in my life, just last week, that we welcomed a granddaughter into our lives. And it's so exciting to think about. And she's so tiny, and the possibility of life and all that we have. And, I said to her my very first words when I saw her in the hospital, and I got to hold her in my arms, and I looked at her and I said, Harper, we're going to have so much fun. And we really are, because life, I consider that part of my legacy, but then I'm reminded that the best that I can do is to water and plant in her life and in Carter's life and Hudson's life and in Weston's life. And there's another grandson on the way. I don't know if we've settled on a name, not we, but his mom and dad have settled on a name. So we'll let that one go. And I think the best thing in life that I can do for them is to plant and water, right? And try to be the best I can be to do good with them, but to trust that God is going to help them grow. And I think that's true for all of us. It's true in church. It's true in how we live our lives, our work lives, our daily lives, our relationships, our friendships. We cooperate, if you will, with God's holy process in our lives, but we don't control it. That's God. And I would suppose if we gave up control a bit, if we backed off a bit, if we allowed God to grow in us and through us, that things might change for us. I thought this morning, it was pouring down the rain. I was sitting in the restaurant, pouring down rain, just pouring rain. April showers, right? Bring Mayflowers. Well, they were a little more than showers, but it's a reminder to me that all of this and all that happens in our lives is because God helps us to grow. I hope that for you and I, that we'll trust and cooperate with God's process in us, and then trusting God to make it grow and change the world as we live our lives together. So that's, for me, part of the resurrection story that's important in our midst. Might we live it fully, and might resurrection continue to bubble us and up in us as God continues to meet us where we are. That's the good news about resurrection. All these stories in the scripture, Jesus just goes where they are and meets them. They don't have to take a step towards him. He meets them where they are. And I just know and trust that God meets us where we are. And that's the good news that surrounds us. So, know that God meets you today where you are. Know of God's love that surrounds you and upholds you and helps you to grow. And know of my love for all of you. And I will see you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.